Minister Bheki Cele and his department's top brass, led by Commissioner Fannie Masemola, are visited Mthatha Police Station in the Eastern Cape earlier today. Political parties led an anti-GBV march there yesterday to hand over a memorandum of demand following the murder of Namhla Mtwa last month. She was shot and killed in her car by an unknown suspect as she was arriving home. All of this comes as most South Africans feel let down by the slow wheels of justice, particularly in cases relating to gender-based violence. For more on this, we're joined by Tekano Health Equity of South Africa CEO Lebo Ramafoko. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. Very concerning. As you and I speak, we know that the police minister is in Mthatha visiting the family of Namhla Mtwa. And of course, all of this comes as the family has been desperately trying to get some movement and someone to be held accountable, with that all falling on deaf ears. Yet we're being promised that GBV is of high importance. Monies have been, budgets have been let out to tackle this issue, but it doesn't seem to be getting any better.
Yes, let me first start by correcting my title. I am now the Executive Director of Oxfam South Africa. I am no longer with Tekano.
Okay.
But indeed, what you mentioned is really worrying. And let me say that the money that is currently supporting the National Strategic Plan to End Gender-Based Violence has mainly been donated by corporates. And so even on funding the Department of Women, even in putting resources to make sure that these cases are investigated, we did much better with the number of courts and the resources that we placed when there was the 2010 World Cup soccer match than we are doing right now. And that is exactly worrying. So the point that you are making is a very valid point. And I think the women of South Africa, the families in South Africa, the people in South Africa are really sick and tired of words that are not followed up by action. However, what we are seeing right now speaks to the state of gender-based violence that many activists had been talking about and warning the country about. I think what we are seeing is also women beginning to come out and use platforms like social media to say this is what is happening. And you are not going to have gender-based violence being controlled or even ended if you don't even have a culture of accountability. It is one thing to go and see what is happening at police station, but the biggest question we need to ask ourselves is, why are police stations not working? And they are just not working. Just yesterday, there was a video again that went viral of a woman who was being beaten up inside the police station as she was there to report a crime. And a number of people talk about the attitude of police people who tell them when they go and report a relative, there was also something on social media to that fact, who go and say that a relative was killed by a boyfriend, who will themselves display very toxic masculine attitudes by also saying these are the things that women do that make them to be killed by their partners. So I hope that beyond the visits, we are going to also strengthen our accountability mechanisms.
It's important you make mention of how we're now seeing women using mediums like social media to speak of the concerns that they're encountering with police, feeling like their matters are falling on deaf ears, which speaks really to the desperation that there is nowhere else to turn. Police are not doing enough, and perhaps some cases may be prioritized, is the conversation that's coming out on social media, to say, who do you need to be and where do you need to come from for police to take your matter seriously?
Well, yes, the Department of Police Services is in shambles, particularly on this. And I want to go back and draw that comparison with what we did with Soccer World Cup. I mean, you could get courts that were running even at night. We have not prioritized the lives of women in South Africa like we prioritized external visitors who came to South Africa to watch the 2010 Soccer World Cup. We have not done so. And the reason why I go back there is the fact that that demonstrates exactly whether or not there is political will, and secondly, whether or not there is capability and capacity in the country. And if we could pull all stops to make sure that there is visible policing, to make sure that, you know, the accords during 2010 World Cup, it shows you that there is capability when there is a political will. I think the women of South Africa and the families in South Africa and the communities in South Africa are basically saying to the president that talk is cheap. And yes, you know, social media and social activism is proving to be what is really putting a spotlight to something that has been happening mainly in secret for a very long time. But for me, it begs the issue of, even as we see family members going out, like we saw in the Eastern Cape, and reporting what their loved ones went through for 17 years. You ask yourself, what is the responsibility of men? The man who is alleged to have committed all of these crimes, as per all of those posts, is seen, is known, is doing business in South Africa. So what it is also telling you is that in this country, all of us, even as civil society, it's one thing to point a finger at the government, but our brothers, our lovers, our sons are abusing women. We know about it, and there is no compact that we have as a society so that people can suffer the social consequences and exclusion of doing this behavior. And they do it because they know that they can, not only because the law will not find them, but because society will tolerate what they do.
And what does it now speak to when it comes to the adjustments that South Africa will need to do in terms of how men and women are socialized, when it comes to now looking at a society that will not be enabling for such crimes to happen?
So there must be social consequences. So for an example, anybody that is known to be abusing a woman should not be able to find a job in South Africa. It should start being a criteria for work. I would even say that it should also be a criteria for people who are not even maintaining their children, because that is another form of economic violence that many, many, many women in South Africa are suffering. The second thing is that people should not be able to do business. We should be able to set up across the country, like we do with corruption, whistleblowing, anonymous, helplines, where if you know, for an example, as a community member, that somebody who is holding a position in the church, holding the position in business, holding the position in government, holding the position in the corporate sector, is an abuser and is a known abuser. You could be a family member and, probably, the woman is struggling to leave. We should have a social compact in this country that we are going to report these incidents. We know where we are reporting them. We can report them anonymously, and then we know that something will be done about them. We don't have mechanisms right now. If, for an example, and many of us do, that somebody you work with or somebody you go to church with or whatever abuses their wife, there must be mechanisms and a duty made to report. Where a duty exists, like if you are a medical practitioner and a woman comes up beaten up and they tell you that they fell, they tripped over their shoelaces and they fell, we must emphasize the duty for those people and officials to report. We must report and report and report and really have a mechanism where we report and these matters get investigated. But also, apart from the social consequences of having social consequences, I think, rather than invest in flags and all of those kinds of things, social cohesion is also making sure that you challenge social norms that promote this kind of behavior, that makes it okay for people to respond violently to any disagreement that they have in their relationships. We need to emphasize the message that what happens in your home is public and is a crime. And you cannot use the fact that it was a dispute between me and my wife as a matter that gives you permission to break the law.
As MPs questioned the police minister's commitment to ending GBV, what we did learn from those conversations is the allegation that going back to Namhla Mtwa's case, that it's alleged that a police officer may have been involved in her murder. Surely now that speaks to the caliber of police. I mean, you speak about reporting and reporting, but who are we reporting to? Because now this allegation has come out, which has some sort of effect when it comes to the public's confidence in the police.
So when I earlier spoke about reporting, I was talking mainly about speaking out.
Yes.
I said there must be consequences in business. There must be consequences. So, for an example, in employment, there must be consequences there. That is the kind of reporting that I was talking about. I was talking about make anonymous helplines possible so that when you walk into a workplace, there can be a number you have to say, if you know somebody that you work with around here who is an abuser, let us know, and then there will be social consequences. The criminal justice system, we've always said, lets women down all the time. And in my opening remarks, I spoke about a woman who, in a video that's going around on social media, was beaten up inside a police station. So these visits for Minister Cele to go to police stations without coming up with a clear plan. You know, I mean, you know how the Commissioner of Police as a position has been a position that sounds like a poison chalice, you know, where every other year somebody comes in and they cannot stay and there seems to be a political fight, etc. When a unit is as unstable as the police, you are leaving the citizenry on their own, you know. And so for me, the minister needs to, we either get a much more competent minister, and there has been calls around that. And I think in this country, when it suits them, they go out of the country, they go and look at other personnel elsewhere and expertise elsewhere. The solutions are there. There must be people, if not in South Africa, and I suspect that they exist in South Africa, elsewhere in the world, who can advise on how you deal with policing. That is why I made an example with the 2010 World Cup, where there is political will, that can happen. But also the Minister of Police, as you rightfully pointed out, to go and follow the cameras, you know, as if they care, or as if these things are a surprise, without telling us, number one, how are you going to stabilize just that ministry? Number two, how are you going to have a special investigative unit that is going to investigate this? Number three, how are you going to bring in other partners, including NGOs, that can come in and help you deal with these issues? Number four, how many other communities have spoken about the lack of resources in the very police stations? We need a complete overhaul. Just go into a police station and try and get an affidavit on a phone that has been stolen. You know that even putting together what you are coming to do is a struggle for the police officers. So there is no confidence in that unit. We are on our own. We are on our own as citizens, let alone cases such that need to be investigated, like when women are killed. And these things happen because we take the poor, we take black women in South Africa as nothing. You know, we only need them when we go to elections, but we don't take them as anything. The lives of women in South Africa is very cheap.
Thank you so much. Thanks for weighing in there, Executive Director of Oxfam South Africa, Lebo Ramafoko. Thank you for your time speaking to the very burning issue of gender-based violence.